Let's go.
You are listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. My name is Amanda, and I'm joined by my two friends, Stephanie and Tyler. We are a trio of coaches on a mission to ignite a collective movement where authenticity, self-discovery, and purposeful living take center stage. Each episode, we go live in the Kaya way. Kaya is an open invitation to show up authentically and vulnerably. It's a safe space to allow ourselves to be worthy and enough now. It's a celebration of our individuality and diversity. So, welcome to the show. We're happy that you're here, and we invite you to join us in today's conversation.
Hello.
Hello.
We're back again.
I just need to take a breath because we're here.
Yeah, that's the time when everything slows down. It feels
Right?
so good.
Honestly, that is so true, Stephanie. It's like busy, and then we get here and it's like, safe space. Safe space to just like be and like not even have an agenda. And I think that's what we were kind of talking about backstage before we went live, because we were like, what are we going to talk about today? Like, what's the topic? What are we, where are we going with this? And all three of us, we were like, I don't know. We don't really know. And I just have to like reflect on a couple of things there, because as the intro was playing, I was like, holy moly, talk about a great example of like imperfect action and trust and surrender. Like, because most people, when they do anything, they overanalyze, they try to control too much, they really force things to happen. And we were literally backstage and we were like, just hit the live button. We'll figure it out. We'll find the flow. We'll just go there. And I just have to say, I so appreciate our ability to do that, to just kind of completely let go and trust that whatever comes out during the show, like that's just what's meant to be today. And I'm only saying this because it's actually very fitting. Like one of my clients messaged me this morning and they are working on trying to create like a short Instagram series for the holidays. And they're very overanalyzing like everything that they do and really stuck in that perfectionism and that analysis paralysis space. And I just like, if you're listening, who and they know who I'm talking about, I'm not going to share names just live here, but like if you're listening, like it's going to be okay. Just take the imperfect action. Let it be messy. Let it be like let go to grow. You know what I mean? And I love that we all, the three of us, we've gotten to that space of being able to just be like, fuck it. Let's hit the live button. We'll figure out what goes on, and we'll just be present for an hour, and we'll like slow down and just take a breath and just really relish in being present with each other. And I find that so refreshing and so beautiful.
You know what this reminds me of, what you were just describing with this control factor? The beginning of my coaching career. When I started to be a coach, I mean, I had roles as a teacher or as a coach, like in sports or whatever. So I was already a little bit experienced in being in front of people. But of course, coaching is nothing like teaching. There's some, overlap, but it's very different from teaching or even mentoring or any kind of like therapy or whatever. And I remember in the beginning, this like, oh, I need a script. Oh, I need to have the perfect questions for my clients. And it's just, I don't know, I just chuckled on the inside when you're saying that. I was like, oh, that sounds very much like the beginning of my coaching career when I was like, oh, I need a script and it needs to be perfect and all of that stuff. And then over time, I let go of that. Like you said, Tyler, like I was just able to have a conversation with someone without any kind of structure. and still have it be a coaching session, like still have it be, oh, that's just the natural flow, and I can, use my tools here and there, but it's not this like rigid, oh, it needs to be that process or nothing. So yeah, I just wanted to reflect on that. And also, wow, yeah, it's so cool how far we come when we practice something over and over.
And I would also add what gets to happen when we do let go. Like how freeing that truly is when we let go of the pressure, the expectations, the shoulds and the have tos and all of those things, I think, that come with so many actions that we take. And when we are really focused on just taking the imperfect action, that's all that matters. And personally, I find that incredibly freeing because as a recovering perfectionist, gotta have everything perfect before I do anything. And that's actually, it's not helpful, right? Like it feels like it in the moment, or as like, the perfectionist, but like growing from that journey and going through that journey for me has really helped me to see that that's actually not it. Like, yes, maybe the goal is perfect, with quotes, like perfect. But in order to get there, right? In order to perfect, maybe we never really necessarily arrive at perfect, because is that really even a thing? But we can take the imperfect action so that we can continue to improve. But if we take no action, then we don't can improve, or we don't know how we can get better, right? And so allowing ourselves to just show up, take the action, come as we are, that's perfectly okay. And it's enough. I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, it's not enough. Unless it's perfect, it's not enough. And it is enough just to show up. Like, even for us to show up here, like, we don't have to have the perfectly polished, like, episode title, or like, I mean, those things are great. Or like, this is the topic, or all of these things just like exactly figured out. Like, you don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to have it all figured out. And oh my gosh, even just like, hearing that out loud it is freeing. Tyler, please.
Something so incredibly powerful, that's the only word that's coming up right now, about just showing up. And like, there's something really powerful about completely letting go of all expectations and all sort of results, because I know what's happening, like with my client right now. They are so focused on how's the audience going to respond to this, and if and are they going to pay attention, and are they going to listen? And in the beginning, no, they don't listen. In the beginning, you have no audience. In the beginning, like there's not, it's just you and the camera and whatever's coming through your mind. But it's through the repetition and the consistency and like the growth. And like, most of us, we never even get to the place of putting enough stuff out there to even see the results of like, oh, now we have an audience, or now we have like a following. We're also focused in on the outcome, that we forget about like the input, like actually what has to go into it to arrive to the outcome. And so we're all so focused in on, this is the outcome. Once I get here, then, I will have arrived, or then I will be successful, or, whatever, that we totally forget about like the input, the actual practice of like, hey, I got to make in my example here, I got to make a ton of really shitty content before I have any audience, or I mean, and this is actually, this is exciting, because on this past Thursday, it was Thanksgiving here in the States, and I was off, and I booked a podcast where I got to go be a guest on another podcast. And the podcast was, and you might actually know the host, Simona Spark. She's part of the HCI community. So I was on her podcast, and she is so refreshing. Like I was like, I'm so obsessed with her, and shout out to Simona, like for being, for doing what she's doing, because her podcast and all of her coaching and all of the work that she's focusing in on is on like intimacy, and it's around, sex and all of these kind of things. And I'm just going to go there because we're live and why not? But like, for me, I've always been super insecure when it comes to that part of my life, and like experiencing and exploring and letting myself go there, with certain things. And so I was like, so her podcast is called Bear, and she, either talks to experts or people like me who just want to come on and really like have a deep dive conversation around intimacy and everything like that. And I was like, I'm going to go challenge myself, and I'm going to go on this show, and I'm just going to like bear it all, like, and because I was like, that's very similar to what we do here on Come As You Are. It's this like whole like radical, like, let me just show up and be authentic, and let me just show up and like put it all out there. Y'all, it was the most uncomfortable conversation I have ever had. And it was so uncomfortable because we were tapping into a part of my life that I've always remained very quiet about. I've always walked around with like a lot of shame, with a lot of like insecurity in this space. And we were just on the show, and she started to ask the real powerful coaching questions that we so love to ask and, sit with. And I was sitting there and I was like, holy crap, I'm so uncomfortable. And I even said that during the recording. I was like, this is uncomfortable, but I have to like, again, shout her out, because in being in that space of being uncomfortable, you find comfort, and you find growth, and you find what you're looking for. And I mean, I just had this like light bulb moment of that is, being uncomfortable, being in a space where you feel like the fraud, you feel like the imposter, you feel so underskilled. That's great. Like I think we need to like tap into more of those feelings and more of that energy, instead of walking around feeling like we have to be the masters of it all, And like I've been working with my clients now on helping them kind of embrace messy over mastery, because we have to be messy. And like we were like on the podcast, we were talking about bedroom and intimacy and actual sex. Like we were going real deep with this stuff. And she goes, Tyler, in your mind, you have this like perfect image of how you want your fantasy to kind of like be fulfilled. And she goes, the reality is, when you first start to explore and experiment, and we talked kinks and all of these kind of things, and you'll be able to listen to all of the dirty details when the episode drops, and I'll be sharing that with everyone. But we went there, and we were having this really deep, raw conversation. And she's like, Tyler, you've painted a picture in your mind that is like so unrealistic, because when you actually get into the bedroom with somebody and you're exploring intimacy and kink and like all of these kind of things, she goes, it's awkward as hell in the beginning. She goes, because there's like a connection that has to be built there, and there's a there's like, you have to learn what you and your partner like and don't like and things like this. And this is the same in every space that we go into. Like, and I'm just, because it's the end of the year, I've been doing like so much reflection as we're getting ready to go into like the new year, and my whole year has been so fucking uncomfortable. Like, I'm realizing that right now. Like it started off with me flying to Tijuana, Mexico, to like have weight loss surgery and like literally have like 80% of my stomach cut out of me. And then to go to lose almost 100 pounds in like 11 months, and like literally look like a different person at the end of this year than when I started this year. And like then going into the gym and like getting comfortable in my body and in workouts and in all of the, like my whole year I've been uncomfortable. And I forget, and I think the three of us are really good at this, and this is why I kicked off the episode by saying like we've gotten a lot better at just being uncomfortable. I think we're so good at being uncomfortable that we don't realize that that's really a great skill to have, and that so many people struggle with, struggle with being uncomfortable and struggling with taking the imperfect action and struggling to like let things be messy in the beginning. And we just so naturally do this, and it's just it's a skill that I'm really grateful for that we've developed during our time here on the podcast. And I attribute a lot of that messy, imperfect action to what we've done here on the podcast. Because I mean, we started this with just like, hey, wouldn't it be fun to record like our deep conversations? And now it's turned into us like onboarding a VA this year and like having to learn how to manage that and how to build out like an actual brand and like what the hell are we even doing here? Like it's turned into so much, but we've only got there because we've allowed it to be really fucking messy and really all over the place. And it's through messy that we eventually get to mastery, and it's not the opposite. And I don't know, I'm just so grateful that we get to be messy here and that this is the safe space to do it.
I like that we are headed to talking about safe spaces. So what does that actually mean? Like, there is the so-called comfort zone that we are also familiar with. It's a big term. And then there is the growth zone. I think that's what you were describing, Tyler, with feeling uncomfortable because that's outside of the comfort zone. And I think we need to distinguish this. And I actually love to have a conversation on this. Like, there is us being bold, brave, courageous, like you were describing, Tyler, with all these new things you were doing this year. And where we go into, I would call it the self-development mode, where we really stretch ourselves. I think that's a term I'd like to use. We stretch ourselves, where we play in the uncomfortable to grow, to change for a version of ourselves that aligns better with who we are at the core. But then there's also feeling uncomfortable because we are in the comfort zone. When we're feeling anxious or we have all kinds of stress factors haunting us. And I think there is a difference, and maybe we are not always aware what is happening when we are in the comfort zone. I think there is a bit of a, like that's a poorly named zone. Comfort zone is a very poorly named zone. Because we're not actually comfortable. Because I think if I were to go around and ask people who don't proactively seek personal development, and I ask them about, their current situation and what's holding them back and all of that stuff, I think they would very quickly come to give me a list of all the things that they don't like in their life. So I think the reason why we call it the comfort zone is just that's our default kind of. And we have all these little quick fixes to make us feel better in the moment, also going in this like area of addictions. And I don't know, I think we've covered this before, talking about all these like mini addictions that we have in daily life. We're scrolling on social media, or just picking up our phone is like this weird habit that so many people do without even doing anything on it. But it can also be like proper addictions, right? Like just drinking or binge watching, binge eating, binge drugging, binge gambling. I don't know, anything in like big box, right? And so that's kind of like our coping strategies to endure the current moment, but it's not gonna get us anywhere. And so I really want to advocate for this. Like, comfort zone is a very poorly chosen word for the comfort zone. I think it should be, I don't know, safety zone, survival zone, that kind of anxiety zone. I don't know, like that would be a way more appropriate name for it. Yeah, and often we are so in it and so blind to it that we don't realize it. And it's hard to get out of it. Like, it's hard, and we need to first have this certain level of, oh, I'm okay. You know, I'm talking like not having any severe trauma or like big social anxiety or whatever. Because then I feel like we're not even in this like comfort zone. We are like in some other zone where we're just really trying to survive. And we need to first get out of that, go into this so-called comfort zone. And then after that, maybe comes the growth zone. So yeah, what do you guys think? Like, what do you think the name for, let's rename the comfort zone. What are your suggestions? let's make this a thing.
So
Yeah, Tyler, go
no,
ahead.
no,
What are
yeah,
your ideas?
I was just gonna say the first one that comes to mind, and this is kind of morbid, but the first thing that comes to mind is the dead zone. Like, to me, it's kind of like the dead zone is where everything goes to die. And because we get in, like, as Stephanie was saying, like, she calls it this, I like the safety zone. I like this, space where, because we feel safe, we feel secure, but it begs me to question, like is comfort killing your dreams? Is comfort killing your desires? Is comfort killing your growth? And I would say yes, it is. Like, when we are in this comfort zone, we're like dead. We're no longer growing. We're no longer opening ourselves up to new experiences or to challenges. And, like, to me, when I think about, like, what is the purpose of life, when I think about, and maybe we talked about this recently, because we tend to do this a lot, but, like, for me, when I think about what is our purpose in life, like, why are we here, I've come down to, we are here to grow, we are here to learn, we are here to expand. And how do you expand if you're stuck in your comfort zone? And so this is why I immediately think, when we say a new name for the comfort zone, I go to the dead zone. Because if you're stuck in the comfort zone, if you're just there in this space of, like, safety, you're no longer growing, you're no longer expanding, you're no longer working on, like, on yourself and working on improvements and, things like this. And I want to preface, and I want to caution by saying, like, this doesn't mean that you constantly always have to be in the growth zone. This doesn't constantly mean that you always have to be, like, challenging yourself to do more or take on more. And I know, like, for us as, like, coaches and as people who are addicted to, like, personal development and all of this growth stuff, we tend to get into this mindset of, like, oh, if you're not growing, like, you're not, what's the point? And there does need to be balance there. There needs to be, moments when we do retreat back to our comfort zones, to our, you could even call it, if the dead zone is too morbid, call it the rest zone, call it, like, the retreat zone, call it, whatever you want, to be like, okay, this is kind of where we go to retreat, to reflect, to say, okay, I don't have to really think about, making any changes right now. I can just reflect on all of the things that have been happening. Because I know, for me, I call myself a recovering self-help junkie. Because when I first started my journey in coaching and in the personal development world, like, I couldn't get enough of the self-help books. I couldn't get enough of, the podcast. I couldn't get enough of, like, everyone who was telling me and teaching me like, oh, this is how you go out and this is how you live life and this is how you become the best version of yourself. Like I became so addicted to becoming like the best version of myself, and that it was almost toxic, that it almost became a place of like, oh, okay, maybe there's too much growth happening, or maybe there's not enough. And so I think we have to be mindful that, you know, you don't constantly have to be in a space of growth, but if you're always stuck in your comfort zone and you're never challenging yourself to do something else or try something new, then what's the point of living? Like, that's my larger question. What's the point of being here if we're just going to always do the same things over and over and over again? And I love even that too, because this idea of like doing the same thing over and over and over again, like that's the definition of insanity, you know, and like expecting a different result or a different outcome. And so like, again, this to me is like so empowering because we can recognize we have a lot of power. You know, we have the power of choice to say like, do I want to stay in my comfort zone, in the dead zone, in the reflection zone, whatever you want to call it, where you're kind of in this space of safety, or am I ready to go out there and grow? Am I ready to go out there and challenge myself and get uncomfortable and be in this growth zone where it's messy, where it is uncomfortable, where it is like you're walking around feeling totally like an imposter, totally like I have no idea what you're doing, because you don't know what you're doing in the growth zone. It's a place of experimenting, it's a place of playing. And I think we need to reframe some of this too, to recognize that when we're in our growth zone, it's not about the place of mastery. It's about the place of allowing ourselves to be messy and to make the mistakes and not be so hard on ourselves when that happens. Because if you are living life in the growth zone, you're taking on new challenges, you're trying new things. We need to drop the expectation that we're going to step into the growth zone and be a master at whatever we're trying or whatever we're working on or working with. Like, it's so unrealistic. Yeah, you might be a master in the comfort zone, in the safety zone, in the dead zone, but also like, is mastery even the point? You know, that's another thing too. Like, because how boring is it? Okay, you master something and then you get good at it, but then where's the fun? Like, to me, I find so much fun in the growth zone and in the challenges of like, oh, I want to try this out or I want to do that. And I guess I never just recognized that, like, as coaches, we really see the growth zone as kind of like our personal playgrounds, and we do have fun in here. Anyway, those are just some of my racing thoughts.
I love it. And I feel like I'm like, okay, this is a lot. I'm like, I just want to like pause, take a breath, come up for air, because it's a lot to take in, right? And I think like as you both were sharing, I'm like scribbling down thoughts and ideas here because I'm like, I don't want to forget, because I think that like we've talked about so many things and we've actually almost, I don't want to say like even eliminated zones, but we're like adding some. You know what I mean? Like this distinction between comfort zone and growth zone. Like maybe it isn't just only two things. Like maybe there's other things in between. Because as you both were sharing, I'm like, okay, so there's like this in the middle, right? Like survival, like, you know, really overcoming the deep traumas, right? Like the reality of some people at times in your life, like we're just trying to survive, right? You're going through a very difficult time. And then we step into like the beyond that, I think in this, like where we're trying to say, okay, like what is it? What's a new name for this? Like what is now like a comfort zone, right? Like, and I think it's such a broad label. And so we're really breaking that area down into a few things. And so this is kind of like what I was writing as you guys were sharing. So it's like there's uncomfortable comfort zone. Then like I think this is like where Tyler was like saying the like that dead zone kind of, you know, idea, or like, is how I'm seeing this is like, you know, we think we're comfortable, right? Or we feel comfortable there because, and I was trying to think of also another name other than that, but because it's like, we're kind of just going around and around in feeling like this, and I kind of like the safety zone in some ways for this, because I think it's kind of this idea that this is where we feel, trying to avoid using the word comfortable, but like, because it kind of is, right? But then, as Stephanie was saying, then you would ask someone, right? Like, are you happy here? Do you enjoy your life? Like, are you feeling like, you know, you're accomplishing the goals, living your dreams? Like, those kinds of big questions come in. And in that zone, you'd say no. Right? Like, I don't feel happy. I hate my job. Like, I wake up every day and I'm miserable, right? But I do it because it feels safe, because it's comfortable. It feels like this is what I'm used to. Like, is that maybe a better way? Like, you know, it's kind of like it's become a status quo. It's become, this is just how it is. And it's hard to get from that to this like growth zone. And so I think what I'm noticing from what we're talking about is almost like there's a zone or two in between that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's like this zone of like, first, that vulnerability to even just admit, to have that awareness of, oh, wow, like, I'm not happy being in this, like, whatever zone you want to call it, right? The uncomfortable, comfortable, like, just that, you know, going through the motions type of living, right? And it's like that vulnerability, making mistakes, the messy, like, that part is there. Then I think there's like another one where we sort of go back and forth between these two. And I think this is what you were saying, Tyler, about like the rest and the, you know, to me, I would call this like integration between, you know, that and the growth zone. Like, we kind of, you know, go back and forth between these two, because if we spend too much time just like growing, we're not really allowing the time to integrate, and maybe some of these kind of like blend together possibly. But I just feel like there's so many more like making that distinction between, like, it's not just like comfort zone and growth zone. And I love this idea of like giving more names to this and adding a few more layers to this. Like, I see this as, and I don't know, like, maybe I'm just assuming everyone has the same visual, but I see this as like, you know, there's like a center, and then it just kind of like has these rings that get larger and larger and larger around it. So that's what I envision. I don't know, that's my thoughts from what we're kind of sharing today.
I think I also have rings in my visual.
Yeah. Okay.
What I always like the explanation that when you go into the growth zone, you kind of step out of we call it now a safety zone. You step out of the safety zone into the growth zone. You try something new, you change something, and so on. And then you maybe have to go back and forth between the safety zone and the growth zone, because it's too much for your system to stay in the growth zone all the time, right? So you go back and forth. I kind of see like it's a muscle we train also, and you can definitely like get better and step more into the growth zone. So I feel like that's a whole other thing. And it's at the beginning, you go into the growth zone, it's kind of like a jungle, and you have to chop some trees and, you know, put some plants aside and everything. So it's a really hard journey to take to go into the growth zone. But then the next time you already have a path, and so on and so on. So the more you go into the growth zone, the easier it will be. And at some point, what used to be growth zone is now part of your safety zone. So before it was really hard to go there, but now it's just, oh yeah, that's actually where I feel safe now. That's so cool. You know, so you kind of like integrated that. I think that's what you were mentioning, Amanda. Like, you integrated that into your safety zone, and then and then you can do it again, right? You can build a new path to something else, go into the growth zone, and then just like it's a perpetual like system basically. Yeah, I like that. So that's why I also visualize those rings, right? Because you just keep adding rings to your safety zone. It becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And also what I was thinking about the safety zone itself, it may also be accurate to say it's some kind of prison zone, but you build the prison yourself, kind of. You say like, nope, I'm going to go in here in my safety room, in my prison, and I'm going to lock the door because I don't want to go outside. I'm scared. And then maybe at some point you're like, oh, maybe I do want to see what's out there because it's kind of cold in here and, it doesn't look good. And, I'm getting like some treats here and there, but, so maybe prison zone is also a word that is accurate.
Ooh, yeah. And I think this is a difference between being conscious and unconscious living, right?
Okay, so I went to Google as we were just talking here to see, because we've all seen the chart of like the circles, but I wanted to pull this up, so I'm going to show this. I'm going to display this. This is the first time I don't think we've ever like shared something live like this, so exciting. Okay, ready?
Let's hope it works. Oh, see? Oh, wow. Okay.
So this didn't display. Yes. I didn't know how this was going to display, but sorry, Amanda, we cut your face off. But
that's okay.
What's very interesting is like this is the typical like chart that shows like comfort zone into growth zone. And what I find very interesting here is between the comfort zone and the learning zone is the fear zone. And to me, that fear zone is, I'm gonna now turn this off so we can see our beautiful faces again. To me, that fear zone is the prison zone that like Stephanie was kind of just talking about, where it's like that fear zone is almost like the prison bars that hold us back, and it's really hard for a lot of people to even get into the learning zone, because like before you can even cross over into the growth zone, like I said, it's that space, it's that messy space where we are learning new skills, where we are practicing, where we're experimenting, where we're making the mistakes. But most of us are so trapped behind the prison of fear that we don't even allow ourselves the chance to even step into the learning zone. And what's really cool about the learning zone is like that's where we get to play. That's where we get to be messy, and it's okay to be messy and to make the mistakes in the learning zone. But we have the bars of fear literally holding us back from ever even crossing over into that space. So yeah, the comfort zone, I would say, is very much like a prison, but it's a prison because we are prisoners behind fear. And Amanda, you had like a reaction.
I love metaphor. So I'm like, ooh, let's build on this. Because what was coming to mind, I was like, oh my gosh. So this idea, right? So if we are taking this, like just building on what you just shared there, Tyler, right? And that the prison bars are the fear. And so what I was thinking was, well, there's a key, right? Like there's a key to get in the prison. And so the question that comes to mind, it's like, have we given the keys to the prison guard, as in like, somebody else? Or do we have the keys ourselves and we can just unlock the door? Because I think that's another layer.
Yeah, I think it depends on what kind of excuse you're making to not get out of your fear zone or out of your, what do we call it now, safety zone or prison zone. So, because I also imagine like, oh, what excuses have I made in the past to not grow? And it still happens to me. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, that's the mean voice right now, right there. So it definitely happens. And so the excuses, it's just that, it's excuses. When I speak to someone and it's clear that they're afraid of something, they start to, come up with reasons why they can't do that thing, right? Why they shouldn't do the thing or whatever. I know that wasn't very specific, but I can't think of an example right now. maybe one of you have a good example for this. But so all the reasons that we come up with, when they sound like very disempowering reasons, it's like, oh no, I can't do this, and life happens to me, and all of that stuff. That's when we say that, that's just the excuses that we make so that we don't have to step out of her, so that we have a good reason to stay. Oh no, I need the bars, I need the prison bars, because beyond that is a jungle, and I'm not stepping into the jungle. Like, have you seen a tiger in your life? Like, I'm gonna get scared. So, and I'm scared of spiders or whatever. So we make the excuses to stay in the prison. And so I would definitely say 100% of the time that we do have the key. I don't even say, I would say that there's not even a lock. It's just a freaking door. And we just don't want to push it open. Maybe there is a lock, but there's no key. Like, we can just, it never is actually locked. But we can definitely, with our excuses, that's why I wanted to start with this, we can pretend like someone else has the key.
Yes,
so for example, when I'm at work and I complain about my manager, for example, and I say, oh yeah, but they never listen to me, and I want to get on this project, but I can't because, and then maybe I would never ever take the initiative and have an actual conversation with my manager on this, right? So I come up with all the reasons why I just stay where I am, so I don't have to do the bold action of stepping up for myself and standing up for myself, stepping up and demanding that I want to be on a project or that things should change or whatever. So I may, in my mind, oh no, my manager has the key. Like, I can't make that decision, right? But it's just an excuse. That's not really what is true. So that's why I think 100% of the cases, if there is a lock, and I like that analogy actually, if there is a lock, we always have the key.
Yes, I agree 100%. But we do. We give, or we think we've, like, we, just because it's easier to say that there's, well, somebody else, it's, something else. This is like what we're talking about here. Like, for us, it's like, it's just casual conversation, but like, this is hard. This is really, really hard. And I think that reminder that, like, it also doesn't matter how many times you've pushed the door open, you've broken down the bars, that the bars still show up. And we need to be mindful of this. And that it's, first of all, okay that happens, because that's like what it means to be human and to be evolving and to be growing. So it's okay. We don't need to judge ourselves or, have that negative, that voice come too loud, right? Like, we need to have that awareness there. But I think, it doesn't matter. Like, and I think especially in the coaching community, right? Like, I think we can all relate to this experience of like, oh, I'm helping my clients with this, but like, I'm also like, struggling with this, or, and I think this leads back to sometimes like that imposter syndrome, right? Where it's like, we think because we have all the tools and we're struggling with something, it's like, but I have the tools. Why am I still struggling with this? It's because we're constantly still growing, and this isn't easy. And it's something that takes time, and it's a journey. It truly is a journey. And I think that that's really important to remember. I think it's really important to remind ourselves of that, because it's easy, especially as these like, self-help junkies, whatever you want to call it. But as those people being very immersed in personal development, that sometimes it's easy to forget that we're also just human too. And yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Finish your thought, please.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
I think also this is why we appreciate help, because we can't see our blind spots. Sometimes we tell ourselves, no, I'm in a growth zone. I'm doing all the things, right? Tyler was describing this earlier. Like, he was so addicted to doing all the things. But then, people who are like gym addicts, that's also not healthy, right? Like, if you do it too much, then I think you're just using this as an excuse of not to face certain other things in your life. So I think self-development can work in that way too. So I think we really appreciate when we have someone who points out to us, oh, I know you think that you're in your growth zone right now, but actually you're just building a beautiful prison right now and you're decorating it for yourself, but it's you're in the prison, right? And so, yeah, that's why it's powerful to have someone to talk to, because we have those conversations, all three of us here together, right? Like I couldn't have come up with this really cool visualization that we have now of all the different zones all by myself, right? That's why I appreciate our sparkling conversations here all the time. And so it's just so natural that on this journey, wherever we are, it's always a journey, that we get some people to help us, that we have a conversation with a friend, that we reflect on it, or maybe just write in our diary, or get someone that is really like equipped with some tools. Because like you said, Amanda, yes, we also have the tools. And sometimes it's like, yeah, I know what to do, but why on earth am I not doing it? So it's okay. For our blind spots, often that's why they're called blind spots. We can't see them. And it's so much more fun. I mean, how much fun do we have here just talking about those things?
I think for me, what I find very fascinating in all of this is the fear. Like, why are we so afraid? And really, like, and I know, like, as coaches, we're not supposed to ask like why questions, because it can be like, I don't know, negative or like things like that. But sometimes you do have to just ask the why question, and you really do have to sit there and kind of go like where does this, or even like, where does this fear stem from, or what is causing the fear, or what, however you want to reframe the question. You could do it a million different ways, but sometimes you just have to kind of ask why. What are you actually afraid of? Like, that's maybe more of an empowering question, but I think we spend so much of our times paralyzed by the fear, and we literally like have this all or nothing mentality, I think, most of the time. And it's like, okay, if I don't get this one post right, then my whole social media account's gonna fail. Or like, if I don't make the perfect, presentation for work right now, then my whole career is gonna be over. And like, we literally have these like such exaggerated like realities that we create in our minds, and then it's fueled by all of this fear. And it's like at the end of the day, like, what are we actually afraid of? What? And it's like, and it's usually like an opinion of somebody else. And I find it just so fascinating. And I get it. Like, and I love this stuff. And I really love like thinking deeply about this stuff and having these conversations. When you think about it, like, why is the fear of others, the opinions of others, why does that make us so fearful? And I love that it really does come back to our very basic universal needs of love, safety, and belonging. And this idea that if somebody out there judges whatever I'm trying to do, or whatever, whoever I am, or whatnot, that they're going to reject me, and then they're not going to love me, and then I'm not going to belong, and then I'm going to die. Like that, like literally, that's like what all of this comes down to, is like. And it's so crazy. It's like we stop ourselves from doing the things that are going to bring us joy, doing the things that are going to push our lives forward, that are going to give us the world that we desire, that we dream about. Because we really think that, oh, if I post this social media post and it's not perfect and it doesn't have the impact that I want, that somebody's going to judge me, and then that's going to lead to death, And it's just wild, y'all. But this is how insane our like brains are wired. This is like our brains are so old. Our brains are so like they're not that powerful. Like they're like they're like primal. They're like like our brains are stupid when you really think about it. And I just can't like I sit here and I go, holy crap. Like when we really break this down, why are we afraid? We're afraid of somebody's rejection, because if we get rejected, like in old times, that means death. Well, that doesn't mean death anymore, y'all. And I think we like honestly constantly have to like remind ourselves that, and remind ourselves that like, hey, we can take this action and we're not going to die. We're not going to get like, we're not going to get kicked out of our tribes. We're not going to be like end up sleeping in the cold. Like, no, none of that's going to happen. But that's what our brains are wired to think. And we're all laughing here, but it's so true. It's so true when you really think about it, that all of our action or inaction hinges on this really outdated old belief that if I do something to upset somebody else, or to, you know, have somebody else have a different opinion than me, then my whole survival is at risk. And it's like, that's just simply not true anymore. But like our brains are so hardwired to believe that it literally paralyzes us. And I just, it's like primal paralyzation, you know, literally what that is. Maybe I just coined a new term. Who knows? But
you have to like get a patent immediately.
That's my next TED talk. Like we're gonna go on a whole thing about primal paralyzation and how it is literally keeping us from living the life that we want to live. And it's just wild. But like this is the stuff that we do every day. Like this is what gets us so excited, and I can see the joy on all of our faces right now.
I feel like I want to summarize what you just said, very simply put, that while our laptops and phones get upgrades, our brains do not.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
I was like, okay, that's a funny blurb. And then what I was thinking for our like metaphor or analogy that we build with the zones and the prison and everything, you kind of just describe, Tyler, the bars of the prison. Like what is written, and I think this is a great exercise to do. I'm like so excited to try this out. So if I imagine myself, okay, that's my safety zone and here's my prison, because we all have it. Don't think that you ever not have a prison. You will always have a prison. It's just, again, building a muscle that helps us to step out of it more quickly, you know, to just not spend too much time in it when we're like, oops, here I am, there's the bars. So what you did, I think, Tyler, was like, what is written on the bars? Like what entity, what person, what thing has you built the bars? Because again, we can just walk out, no keys required, or we do have the key actually. So it's like we imprisoned ourselves. So what's written on those bars? And I think love, safety, and belonging is probably 3 bars that we all share. And then it just shows up differently for everyone. So for someone, you know, the bar of, like you said, belonging might be, oh no, if I post the wrong post on social media, I'm going to die, right? So that's maybe one person's bar in terms of belonging. Maybe for someone else, it's, oh gosh, if I wear the wrong color dress to the wedding, I'm going to be like, no one will want to take a picture with me. I don't know. I just made that up, right? So it's this like belonging. So it's for everyone probably different kind of scenarios, but I'm sure that love, safety, and belonging is behind every worry, concern that is written on any person's bars, if that makes sense. So I was just thinking, oh, that's a fun exercise. What are my bars? And what are the fear sentences that are obviously, like you said, Tyler, absolutely not true? Like no one's gonna like exclude you from society because you did the post in green and not purple. No one's gonna do that. But somehow that's the lie that's on the prison bar that keeps you in prison. So I just wanted to like add this. And again, I'm super excited to try this out for myself.
I'm gonna sprinkle in one more thing to that, because I love the bar analogy. What's written on the bars and how big is the bar? You know, because you know, prison bars, like they're actually real thin. You know, they're pretty, you know, they're pretty thin, but how thick have we made our bars in our prisons, you know? Because I guarantee you there are some that are going to be a lot thicker than others. And being able to identify that too, and being able to kind of work to say, okay, this is the prison bar that I really need to focus in on, you know, getting through or you know, working on reducing, like that idea of like how thick is it too, because that's I think also very important. Y'all, I'm excited for this exercise. I'm going to do it today.
Okay, so I'm going to add one more thing to that ad, but I think kind of like bring this exercise to life, because this is actually something that I did recently. And so as you were showing, I'm like trying to flip through my journal here and find what was that? Because and when I look at it, like, it was a fairly simple question, but it was a really profound exercise for me. And when I thought of it this way, it really helped me. So if it helps anybody else, I'm here to share. But so the question was, what fears keep you from change? So what are the fears that keep you from change?
And are they true or not?
Like, well, that was the next part of the exercise. It actually had like transforming those fears. Like, what is the fear and what is the truth, right? Like, what are the facts? Like, really, what is that? Can we get to the essence of like, what is this trying to, this belief or this fear is trying to protect us or to keep us safe or to have that belonging? Like, what is the underlying like reason that we would want to keep that, you know, like the secondary gain, right? Why would we want to even keep that belief? What is the purpose of it? Why is it even helpful? Because we have these beliefs because we think that they are helpful. And that's why I think sometimes it is so, this work is so challenging, and we do have blind spots because of exactly that. It's not easy. It's truly, it's not easy. We're talking about it here. Like, it's, you know, like, just ask yourself some questions and, you know, that's it. But, and though that's a great start, but there's so much more to that. But I love that we've had this conversation, because I think that it's super valuable and a really important reminder that it's not like a one and done. It's a journey, and we continue to do this work over and over and over again. Doesn't matter how many like programs you've done, doesn't matter how many tools you've learned, doesn't matter, you know, how many therapy sessions you've had. Like, we're constantly rinse and repeat. And we do grow stronger, and we have a better sense of personal or self-awareness and hopefully self-compassion. So it does sort of get easier in a sense, but not at the same time. And that's okay. And that's actually just part of the process. It's all part of the process. And we don't need to judge ourselves of how our process looks or how it looks different compared to somebody else's. Like, we all have our own. And though some of our prison bars might look similar, the circumstances that led to building those bars are different for everyone.
I'll add
reminder.
I'll add one final thing to this, because we're wrapping up. And
we can go on forever.
Honestly, this conversation could go on for like days, like y'all. Like, there's so much to this. But the last thing that I will say is, when you start to ask these questions and you start to do the reflection and you put the time in to really sit with yourself, for the love of God, do not answer with, I don't know. That is my biggest pet peeve, is when I'm working with a client and I ask them the question and they go, I don't know. No, you've completely just taken away your power. You do know. You do know. You might be afraid to actually say what is on your heart or in your mind, but you do know. And if you don't know yet, say that. Say, I don't know yet. Like, don't close yourself off by saying, I don't know, because you do know. You do know. You just haven't spent enough time sitting with yourself in this reflective space and in this, you know. And gosh, that's what gets me so excited, is that we have the power. We have the power to sit and reflect and make the choices and make the changes and go out and actually co-create the life that we want to live. But you're not going to get there if you say, I don't know, because you do know. Deep down, you really do know what you want. You really deeply down know what your fears are. Let them come out. Let them come up. Let them work through them, because that's how you're going to take your power back. You're not going to take your power back by saying, I don't know. Might as well just give up. And that's my final take.
Yes, I love get is one of my favorite words. I teach it to all my clients in the beginning because it's so important, right? Anything like I can't do that yet, or I'll never be able to do that. Well, not yet, you know? And so when we add that on, it just gives so much hope and possibility. That's huge. That's a game changer. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Well, I would say that we wrap it up with this game changer. So remember, not yet.
Not yet.
We haven't recorded our next episode yet. We'll be here next week.
It's just not next week yet. So
Well,
with that lovely, sorry, I cut you
Go
off.
ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I was just wrapping it up now with this. Amanda, do you want to
having
share?
like explosive moments, like
Yeah.
you see it all across his face. He's
Yes.
like, "Wait a minute, there's another thought. Write it down for
Write it
next
down.
time."
Write it down. Yes, absolutely. Okay, y'all.
We have
Well,
fuel for 5 more episodes now.
thank you all so much for being here, for being a part of the process, for coming to this space to grow with us, because that's really why we created Kaya in the first place, was being the playground, being the space to play and to grow and to think deep and to go there, because that's how you're going to improve your life, and that's how you're going to take back your power. So thank you for letting us kind of be the thinkers, the reflectors. I don't know where I'm going with this, but anyway, we so appreciate you. We love you, and we cannot wait to do this again next week. Have a fabulous day, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. You can follow the show on Instagram at Kaya the Podcast and on YouTube and Facebook by searching Kaya the Podcast. If you haven't already done so, please help us keep the conversation going by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. And be sure to join us next time for another deep conversation.